All right, so we've seen examples of this. Is it wise or not? We're going to be talking about family members serving together on church staff.
What would you know about family members serving together anywhere?
Well, we own a family business. You have employed all of us. I have my father as my boss. So this is a strange topic. I need to be very careful about what I say.
I think you need to be very open about what you say.
Well, so this is different than a business. We're talking about a church.
I know there are some parallels there, and
absolutely.
I thought it'd be good in the context of this podcast just to talk about some of our benefits and challenges of having family members work together. I mean,
well, yeah, of course.
Let's get real.
Well, we always do. And I promise our listeners I will be completely open and honest about all of your foibles.
And I won't be open and honest about all of yours because I want to go home to your mother.
Yeah. But before we do, I certainly want to thank our sponsor, Tyndale, who has published an incredible book, Live Your Truth and Other Lies by Alyssa Childers. Alyssa Childers is the best-selling author of Another Gospel, and this particular book is going to help you examine modern lies that are disguised as truths in today's culture. It is called Live Your Truth and Other Lies. Excellent new release. You need to go check it out. The best lies are often the ones that sound the most beautiful, like, hey, you can live your own truth. You are enough for you, and God just wants you to be happy. Well, those sound good on the surface, but there is some deeper problems within. This book unpacks all of that. So this is a book about planting our feet on the bedrock of God's truth that doesn't evolve with cultural trends. Again, Live Your Truth and Other Lies is a book by Alyssa Childers. We certainly thank Tyndale for publishing it and letting our audience know about it. Go pick up a copy today. Would love for you to have one.
Hey, right. I recently met with the Tyndale executive team, incredible people. Had a great meeting with them in the Chicago area. So just every time I connect with them, I appreciate them more.
Their team is one of the best in terms of resources for Christian ministry. Let me tell you, Tyndale, they really put out some good stuff.
It's great to partner with them. What a great partnership. All right. So, Sam, we're going to talk about, is it wise to bring a family member on church staff? And we are going to talk about the church answer staff a bit. We're going to talk about the pluses and the minuses because they're definitely both of those. But the first thing is it depends. I mean, there's so many.
Should you or shouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should you or shouldn't you? Well, it depends.
The variables are all over the place. I think that's redundant. I think if you have variables, by their very definition, they're in different places because they're not fixed. But
you can't give a blanket rule on this one, but I think that there is general wisdom that we can share when it comes to working with family members. I will say a business is categorically different than a church. You're right, there are parallels, but a family-owned business to me is a completely different thing than a church. So I'll just come right out and say that.
I totally agree that some of the dynamics of church life do not lend themselves directly to what we do at Church Answers or any other family-owned business. And family-owned businesses, by the definition, usually get handed down from family member to family member until the business is ultimately sold, if it is. So you're correct there. You don't hand down a church like you hand down a business. I mean, you may have a success.
Well, some try.
I know you may try, but ultimately, you don't own the church. So that is exactly right. So we'll start off on saying it depends. Let's talk about how it can succeed, or some of the elements that are necessary for success. And it'll probably be a little bit redundant from some of our future points that we have in this podcast. But you're talking to a pastor about bringing on his son. The pastor is the lead pastor. The son is going to come on, let's say, as executive pastor. We could have student pastor, worship leader who's coming on the executive pastor, if that affects anything that you're saying there. What would you tell the lead pastor giving him advice on how to make this thing work. What's some advice you have?
You're talking about a lead pastor wanting to hire an executive pastor that is his son?
Yes. Or you can
No.
make it another staff position. What'd you say?
Yeah, I would not do lead an executive pastor. I would
Okay.
not do that one generally. I mean, I'm sure somebody who's listening can point to an exception and say, "Hey, this has really worked well." And I would say, "Great. I'm glad." We're just talking general wisdom here. I don't think it's an issue of sin. I don't think it's an issue of leadership failure or anything like that. I just think your father-son duo and lead executive pastor is really kind of setting yourself up for some odd dynamics. I would say it succeeds when there's some distance between family members, meaning I'm bringing on my son. He's younger. He's an intern. He feels called to ministry. I'm a lead pastor. He's going to serve in the worship ministry as an intern. Okay, that's great. I think that works. I think if you have any family member reporting to another family member, it gets really wonky, like a direct report. So I would just say when there is a clear, because families are called together in the church, they're all called together. And you're all going to be serving together in the church. I know that's the case with my family. Goodness, my wife leads so many different efforts in the church, but she's not a staff person. So let's make that distinction. This is paid staff. This is an actual employee of the church.
Right.
There, obviously, if a pastor's family is serving well in the church, the whole family is going to be involved in all sorts of ways, right? That's just a healthy thing. That would be the case of any family, not just the pastor's family. The whole family serving together. That's what you want for every family in the church. So we're talking about paid staff positions.
Yeah.
I would just say it succeeds when there's distance, when it's not a direct report, and when it's the church, and when the church just goes, "Oh yeah, this makes sense." When the whole of the body is like, "Yeah, your son or your daughter is certainly called in this area. We see this," and there's an affirmation from the church of this is good. This is something we desire. So I would say make sure that there's distance, and make sure that the whole of the body kind of views it as a good thing. There's always going to be some malcontents that throw things out there, but generally speaking, you're gonna want the affirmation of the body, and you're gonna want the formal buy-in, whatever polity you have, of the governing body of the church. So every church is structured a little different, but if I wanted to, my kids are too young, but if I wanted to employ one of my children, my wife would never want to work for me. So that's just out of the picture. But if it wouldn't be her problem, it would be my issues that would be the problem. But let's say in some future date, my kids, I would get my personnel committee to formally buy that in, and there would be a very clear process there and very clear understandings of what they're doing and what they can't do. So that's when it has succeeded.
Again, maybe apples and oranges, but let's talk about Church Answers for a moment. We are a business. I don't think we qualify anymore as a small business. So we're a mid-sized business by definition right now. To give the listeners a kind of a perspective of who we are a partnership that is owned. The two partners are Thom and Nellie Jo Rayner. That is where the ownership is. But there are three Rayners other than the parents who are involved. One of them is on this podcast, Sam Rayner. He serves as president. He is basically co-vocational. He works with us and he works with his church. He basically shares that world. Then there is Art, who is the second most involved, but again, the hours are significantly fewer than Sam's hours. And so he's really hired for a specific task more than anything. And then even fewer hours is Jess, and he is hired for a specific task. But we do have all of our original family, Thom, Nellie, Jo, three sons, involved in the business. Talk about, first of all, the strengths of that. I'd like you to be transparent, then we're going to get to the challenges that you've seen in this.
Yeah, I think the strengths are we all kind of like different things. So we're not in each other's turf a whole lot. Art's doing retail and has a marketing background. Jess is more on the operations side of things, the details, putting things together. He's more of an engineer in his mind than anything else. And I'm more on the leadership side and content creation. Although both Art and Jess are good at content creation, that's not what they do at Church Answers. So I think part of the reason that it works is we kind of have our own area, our own sandbox where we're playing. And we'd get along fine if we had to work together on stuff. But for us and our family dynamic, I think it works out well.
To me, the positives far outweigh the challenges on this, without a doubt. I thrive on the fact that in our weekly Zoom meeting, I have 3 sons and a wife on the screen, along with the other core employees of our team. It is fun. It is a blessing. I wouldn't change it. I would not change it. And again, I won't bring Amy into this and ask her to come on the screen and comment on it. But I would speculate that although there may be times that having that many Rainers is kind of funky.
Maybe there are definitely times.
It's overall something that they seem to handle well. I guess that's the way to put it.
The team handles it incredibly well. Yes. To their credit. Much to their credit.
They do. Okay, and we'll come back to the church in just a moment. What have been some of the challenges of a family-owned business from your perspective?
Well, we all have very distinct personalities that we've experienced our entire lives. And we really don't have the ability to set aside that background that we have. And because we've lived with each other this whole time. So when you go to a job, you can kind of just set that aside. That's a personality thing or what have you. As much as you try with family, you can't really do that. And when you're working together, it does mean that you have to work especially hard when there's personality conflicts because it's your family.
We have them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We have leadership conflicts. We have personality conflicts. We have differences of opinion, and we work through them. But there are times that it gets uncomfortable.
Can. And granted, that can happen anywhere, any workplace. But again, I think the team and our family really handles it fairly well. We've never had a knockdown drag out to the point where we're not talking for months on end. So that's good.
That's true. Well, and there, another point to this is if I were ever too negative to you or Sam, you're Sam, you or Art or Jess, I would have to hear from the other partner in the organization, which is your mother. And she just is going to be totally protective of you.
Well, that's true. We do have a shield.
Yes.
We do have a great shield that is Mom.
All right.
Let's talk about why. Yeah, let's talk about the church. So there are ways that this can succeed when you have family members who are staff. But I think more times than not, it's hard on the church. I think it can work, but I think more times than not, it's hard. I was perusing a church website. I will not mention anything more about this church. I was researching a particular case, not anything involved with Church Answers. This is this is a client. This is not a client of Church Answers. It's somebody outside of Church Answers. I was just looking into something, and I go to the website, and I know that this church has had several lead pastors, 3 or 4 in 10 years. Let's just say. I don't know the exact timeline, and I look at the staff, and there's a worship pastor, and his wife serves with him on staff. There are 2 of his children that serve on staff. And I want to say that there was another family member as well. So like 3 or 4 or 5 family members on staff together in a case where the church has just turned through lead pastors. You think that church has a problem?
Apparently so.
So this can work against you, I guess is what I'm saying. It can fail.
There is great joy when it does work, because you're doing ministry with people with whom you're closest, and that is great joy. On the flip side, you are doing ministry with a difference of opinion with people that are closest to you. That becomes a very negative situation. And it's not only negative for you, as you indicated, Sam, it's negative for the congregation, and it becomes awkward for the congregation, especially those in leadership roles in the church, because they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, I think that this was a church staff that may have had 8 people on it, 8 or 9, and roughly half of the staff is one family. That gets to a point to where there's some big warning signs there, some major warning signs. And in the vast majority of cases, I would say it's ill-advised. Not to say that I'm sure there's an example of where it worked beautifully, but I get a lot concerned when I see that kind of pattern at a church. I also know that there are certain traditions, faith traditions, church traditions, where the husband and wife serve together. It's kind of a team. I realize that's not really what we're talking about here. Where you see kind of co-pastor model between the husband and wife. I realize that that's the case at a lot of churches. That's not so much what we're discussing here. It's more about a kind of a church with a few family members that are on staff together.
Let's suppose it's going to happen. Let's suppose that the lead pastor is going to bring on a family member. Okay, it's not an XP, maybe a student pastor, maybe an intern, like you say. Talk to me about the type of boundaries that should be established between the dad and, let's say, in this case, the son.
Yeah, let's do father and son. One, I would say no direct reporting. If at all possible, have the son report to someone other than the father. And then from there on out, it's what you would pretty much do with anyone else. Clear job description, accountability. If you have reviews, which you should, you're doing reviews. All of the measures that are put in place with everyone else apply to the son in the example we're using. It's not fair to the son to not do that, and it's not fair to the church, because when it works great until it doesn't work, and then it's just it can be it's a complete dumpster fire, because now you're in a position of, well, we have to let go the lead pastor's son, right? And that's hard. So if you do this, you have to realize that should things go south, they are going to go south much worse with family members than with just someone else that gets hired, generally speaking. So you do have to be extraordinarily careful. Nepotism is a very real thing, and you have to recognize it as nepotism. Like nepotism is not always bad. That word has a negative connotation. By design, a family-owned business is nepotism. Like it just is. But you have to recognize that, son, the only reason you have this job is because your dad's the lead pastor. Like that has to be recognized.
You mean that attitude?
What's that?
That attitude that someone
yes.
The reason you have this job is because of your dad.
Yeah, that could get thrown around as an insult from a church member, and that's inappropriate too. I'm just saying everyone needs to recognize what is obvious. So set those clear boundaries, set those clear guidelines. No direct reporting. Let's recognize it as nepotism. That may not necessarily be a bad thing. The son may be one of the most gifted individuals in the church and may do an incredible job. And the church may say, wow, the only reason we have this guy is because his dad is the lead pastor, and we're blessed to have him. And we wouldn't otherwise have him. So, there's this cuts both ways, but you just have to recognize the obvious. If you don't, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. And you also have to know if it goes south, it's going to go badly. You're taking a chance when you hire family members in the church.
One of the big downsides, Sam, is let's go back to that scenario. Pastor, student pastor. Even if you have someone in between the two to do the supervision, say an XP who's actually over the student pastor, and the pastor is the dad and the student pastor is the son. Then you have the situation where the dad either feels called away from the church or, even worse, gets fired from the church, what then happens to the son?
Anything. I mean, what?
That was
I mean,
rhetorical.
you just if yeah, I mean, if you're the son, one, you're probably putting your resume out. You would be a fool not to. Two, you just got to know anything could happen at this point.
Right.
If your dad gets fired for something, I mean, anything could happen, and you can't hold that against the church. You have to recognize I was brought in because I was the son. I may be escorted out because I'm the son. And that's just reality. You can bemoan that, but it's just reality. And it's one of the downsides of working on a church staff together with, mother, daughter, father, son, whatever the relationship is. So what happens when the family member and authority leaves the church? Well, just about anything can happen. But in most cases, again, we're talking generalities, it's probably not wise to stay at the church, whatever happened, whether you agree with your dad leaving or not.
So we've been talking about, is it wise to bring family members on church staff? We began with it depends. Sam put in the caveat there. It is fraught with danger. And so if you decide to do it, you've got to have some clear boundaries. You have to have some accountability other than the family members to each other. And you got to be prepared if any exits take place. There are a lot of contingencies. So the bottom line on this is we don't have a clear answer. We do say, if you decide to do so, be careful, but all things being equal, it might not be the best decision to make. But we're still not going to say that categorically because it has worked in some situations. Is that a decent summary of where we've gone on this?
I think it is. I think so.
Well, we'll leave it at that, and we will leave our statement about Logos with accolades. I got to tell you, we did a webinar several weeks ago with Logos. It was one of the best we have had, and they did all of the presentation. And you and I have talked about that. We've reviewed it, and essentially what we've said is it worked so well because they had such a great presenter and because they have such a great product. And the combination of those two made it a great webinar. Well, they're still our sponsor. They're a sponsor on this podcast. We're so grateful to Logos. And if you want to go deeper into the word, Logos is the Bible study platform for you. Logos fuses powerful technology with biblical resources. They got it all. They've got all kind of search tools, Bibles, commentaries, seminary level courses, audio books. As a matter of fact, they have 200,000 digital books on there from the world's top publishers. We want to make this offer to you. Logos is now more affordable. Get started for just $49. Unbelievable. Go to logos.com/churchanswers. You can also see it in the show notes. That is logos.com/churchanswers. Once again, thank you for being on Rainer on Leadership. We're going to continue to have these discussions that may not have precise answers, but it will at least get you thinking in a certain direction. We'll continue to talk about issues that are critical to the local church today, and we'll see you in the next episode.